All right, welcome everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. As someone asked in the chat, we are recording. So just want to make sure everyone knows that if you do have to hop off or if you have a friend that wasn't able to join us this evening, feel free to let them know. We will be sharing this recording on our YouTube channel. That's at the MPHM on YouTube. You can also get connected through our website. But I'll start with just a brief introduction. We have a couple other National Public Housing Museum staff who've introduced themselves in the chat and otherwise. But this this evening is really about you all and getting your questions answered and making sure you have everything that you need to apply for this opportunity, which we're gonna give you some information about. But again, we want to make sure we hear your questions and leave plenty of time for any conversation that you all are interested in having with us. Some names look familiar. Some folks definitely haven't met before. So I'm excited to connect with you all. My name is Tiff Beatty. I am the Associate Director here at the National Public Housing Museum. I work really closely with this residency and selected artists, along with some of my colleagues here on the call. So I'm a great resource. You'll see my name and email sort of floating around, including for those of you who are returning applicants. If you are interested in applying again before you reapply, you might want to check in with me and I can tell you more about that later on. But again, I just want to say welcome. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to just give you a brief overview of the agenda. But first, we'll start with a brief a land acknowledgement and also invite you all to do so in the chat, knowing that folks are joining from all over. So we here are in Chicago. We want to recognize that our museum and me personally, located here in the traditional homelands of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, the Potawatomi people, known as the Council of Three Fires, as well as many other indigenous tribes that call this land home and continue to steward the land. We recognize that acknowledgement is just one step, but a critical public intervention toward honoring Native communities and enacting this much larger project of decolonization and reconciliation. And as you'll notice, there's these threads throughout our work where we really do want this to be more than just a statement. And you'll hear about some more of those opportunities as well as we are doing the work to really share and learn how these struggles are interconnected, including Native people all over the world, as well as public housing residents here in Chicago and across the country that have been displaced and erased from our history. And so it's a big part of what we do. So we want to make sure to invite you all into these conversations through opening with the land acknowledgement. And yeah, thank you for just taking this moment with me. Okay, now getting into our agenda. As I said, we're gonna leave some time at the end, but we really do want to make sure everyone has the same information just to level set. Some of this information is also on our website, and some of you have also experienced our programs before, so you know a little bit about us, but we want to make sure, again, everyone is familiar with who we are as a National Public Housing Museum. We want to give you a little bit of background about sort of our philosophy and our theory of change, which really is something that we express through all of our programming, but in particular, this project is very focused on leveraging arts and culture in order to make creative interventions in public policy. And so we want to get into that a little bit, and we'll have you all some examples to share as far as past artists and previous projects. And then we have some FAQs that we have pulled from real life questions, as well as some that our staff have come up with, just to open up that Q&A with those. And then again, we'll hand it over to you all for your questions. And you can also feel free to drop questions in the chat anytime throughout this. And we'll try to hold on to those and make sure we come back to those at the end. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to hand it over to our wonderful executive director, Dr. Lisa Yoon Lee, who really is the mind behind this project and a lot of the programs at the museum. Just the brilliance of coming up with a residency like this that does this work. So I want to make sure that we all give Lisa a warm welcome, and just thank you, Lisa, for introducing us to the museum and to this project.
Thanks so much, Tiff. And, I'm really so grateful for how much you've nurtured this program along with the other staff who are also on the line. First, I just want to hold up my favorite banner, which is "There are artists among us," which is so exciting. I'm really, really glad to be with you all. Thank you for joining us. You are all the makers and the creators in this world in which there's so much unmaking and so much destruction. And I just want to let you know how much we value your work and your contributions. As Tiff said, I am the executive director of the National Public Housing Museum, and we are a civic institution that will be an anchor on the near west side of Chicago in the last remaining building of the Jane Addams Homes. And our mission is to preserve, promote, and to propel the right of all people to a place where everyone can live and prosper and to work for housing as a human right. We are a site of conscience, which means that we call on the power of place and memory and explore what have we not yet learned from history in order to create a more collective and just future for us all. We are also an African American historic site, and we are committed to the work of artists in the world. Storytelling and challenging the mainstream narrative is at the core of our work and our theory of change. We know the danger of a single story, and all of our work is geared to make sure, as John Berger has said, never again will there be a single story. And for us, storytelling is really the giving of accounts and being astute students of history and understanding how things came to be. And having an analysis is therefore both about assigning and accepting accountability for history and also for the repair. And this includes a keeping of accounts, which is about redressing and reparation past harms through the distribution and redistribution of resources in a more equitable way. And that is how we understand the connection of the giving of accounts, of accountability, and then the keeping of accounts. All of our programs are informed by this theory of change. And so including Artists as Instigator, we also have an oral history archive and the Beauty Turner Oral History School Academy. And, in this space, we really allow people to tell their own stories, and we're creating a beautiful online digital archive. And we really want to respect the writer Rebecca Solnit's notion that it's always someone else's story first, and it never stops being their story too, no matter how well you tell it and how widely you spread it. And so all of our work is about really also respecting the narrator and their work and their sort of life story, which is really an important form of cultural capital. When we open in this last remaining building, we were founded by public housing residents who understood the power of storytelling and the sort of importance of them contributing to telling the history of public housing, which often has demonized and created stereotypes around the people of public housing, but hasn't really contributed to understanding the ways that public housing can teach us how to be with one another. It challenges so many notions of racial capitalism, of the nuclear family, of whatever it may be. But they really understood how there needed to be a place to also celebrate the people and the stories of public housing, and also a way to have a systemic analysis of what went wrong and also tell the stories of what went right. The museum has a lot of really innovative spaces, and I'm just going to briefly touch upon them, including things like a museum store cooperative, which is built upon the stories of candy ladies and barbershops and informal economies and organized efforts to provide services and goods in spaces of organized abandonment. And so we really have this beautiful project, which will be a corner store cooperative within the museum store when we open. We also believe in the power of objects to tell stories that sometimes we forget. And so there is our exhibition galleries with objects that public housing residents have lent to us, and we're in writing workshops with poets like Nate Marshall, and writers like Audrey Petty. They have crafted beautiful labels for their objects. We have a music room that celebrates musicians, and is curated by DJ Spinderella from Salt and Pepper. She grew up in the Pink Houses. And so the whole museum is infused with a lot of different creative efforts of ways of telling the stories with and about public housing residents, in order for us to find a way of addressing housing insecurity, which is one of the greatest issues facing us today. Our everyday work, and you can sort of go on to the next slide, Mark, which I think is just the Artists Instigator. It's a really important project for us. And you can go to the next slide, which is committed to linking arts and culture and public policy. We really believe that cultural change always precedes political change. And there is a beautiful quote from the hip hop scholar Jeff Chang, where he says, "Every moment of major social change requires a collective leap of imagination. Political transformation must be accompanied not just by spontaneous and organized expressions of unrest and risk, but by an explosion of mass creativity." And that's where you all come in. The other part is, and you can go to the next slide, Mark, with 8. There are a lot of scholars, researchers, artists, and activists, and residents and communities who have really come up with an analysis of public housing, analysis of both the history and also presented solutions. But sometimes that analysis is sort of like on the page. And the question is, how do we move it from the page onto the stage of the world, so that more people can actually understand it, can experience it, and then to take that knowledge and do something with it. And so we really believe that there is a place for scholars, both informal and formal, in the work that we do. And we want to find ways of pairing scholars and artists together so that data and numbers and statistics and analysis can actually have new life and resonance for broader groups of people. And you'll see how we've done that in some of our partnerships with artists as instigators. If you want to go to the next slide, Mark. We started the Artists as Instigator series with a partnership with a community-based scholar, and also who is now an assistant or associate professor at UIC. He's amazing. His name is William Estrada. He has a lot of different projects out there, but he is a brilliant screen printer. And so he wanted to work with some CHA youth, the Chicago Housing Authority youth, and start to screen print t-shirts and tote bags with us, to design them and to actually print them. Next slide. And to like create these products that we would then sell on our website, and then where we would distribute the profits to the youth. And so he kind of started gently getting to know the community with this project. He knew he wanted to do a screen printing project, but wasn't quite sure exactly what it was going to be. And so he gently started attending meetings of public housing residents and learning about the campaigns that were happening here in Chicago. You can go to the next slide. And so one of the really major campaigns that was happening was called a Just Housing Initiative, which was a collaboration, a coalition of a lot of different housing groups. A lot of groups were working for abolition as well, to say, hey, we need actually a local ordinance and a law that says that you can't discriminate against people who are formerly incarcerated when they're looking for housing. And so he started working with this coalition, and they were like, we need a branding campaign. We want signs to hold in marches, to go to City Hall with, to hand out to businesses. And we want to share what this campaign is, and to have the public to be able to write postcards to their council people and council representatives to say, you should pass the Just Housing Initiative. And so William helped to design this beautiful campaign of I am not my record, like all these different signs that were passed out, and also all these postcards. And it was really beautiful and brilliant. And we're really happy to say that that project actually we won, right? Like when we organize together, we can win. And the Just Housing Initiative is now law. And so that was a really exciting residency. And he did a bunch of other work with us too, including doing portraits of public housing residents during the holiday time. And so it was a lot of different small projects that he developed around his craft and his art, but knowing that he wanted to participate in a policy initiative and to work on a campaign and also to work directly with youth. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, and that's really fun because at that time we were working with the Cook County Commissioner, Brandon Johnson, and now he actually is our mayor. So that was exciting. All right, next. The next artist as instigator was Jen de los Reyes, who is a community engaged social practice artist, who was here in Chicago, but now is at Cornell as a dean of diversity. And it was during a period of time of both we're coming out of COVID, and it was also the election was approaching, and I can't believe we're actually in this moment again with the election approaching. And there was a lot of despair, people feeling like, why should we go vote? And then also a kind of sense of what is the difference, like what happens the sort of day after the election. And so how we wanted to both have a message of love and care for our communities around us in the building. And so she designed these large murals to place on the side of our building. And she also wrote a beautifully heartfelt letter that was sent out to thousands of people that we helped send out, sort of imploring and inviting people to take electoral politics seriously, but to also realize that it wasn't everything, but also saying, hey, please register to vote, go vote. It's really important. And also we'll still be here for one another afterwards. And I think there's another slide, Mark. Next, yeah. And so she designed, oh, no, go back one. Oops, so she designed these, go back one more. Yeah, this one. So she designed these broadsides that were sent out also with the letters. And you can sort of see they're just these beautiful things that people hung up all across the country. And so her project was really focused on the letter, the invitation to vote, and these broadsides and those posters. But then also, as she was learning about what we were doing, you can go to the next slide now. She worked with us on a project that we had, which was called 36 Questions for Civic Love, which we had launched during the pandemic, which to bring strangers together to talk with one another and to get to know one another and to grow civic love, and to make civic love with one another, with the idea that before you really jump into wrestling around big issues around homelessness, migrants, Palestine, the sort of housing crisis, like maybe you should know how somebody grew up, what kind of high school they went to, what was their favorite gift that they received, things like that. And knowing more about people allows us to grow this love with one another in order to engage in the big questions with one another. And so Jen really loved this project. And so she said, hey, I would love to work with you to develop. She became a civic love notary, and she designed these really beautiful limited edition sort of art notarized love certificates, where when people did civic love with one another, they would get a certificate that said, like, on this day you made civic love, and then she notarized it. And so it was a kind of sweet also side art project. And you'll kind of see that in almost all of our relationships with artists, it's a deep curatorial relationship that we want to have with you to help nurture a project that you already have, but then also to be in relationship with you, where you will learn more about our work also and find ways for you to grow your talent and contribute to maybe work that we're doing. And then we can also work with you to push and help to advocate for the work that you maybe were already doing, but also wanted to do in a different way with different communities. Yeah, cool. I think that's my last slide. Is it? Do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All
Oh, maybe
right. So,
there's one more thing, which is just to say that the exciting thing is we've been doing all of this work and planning for all of the exhibitions and things like that to be in this building that will also include 15 units of housing in the back of it. But we're not yet even open in that space. And so we'll be open in that space in the end of September. And so what is really extremely exciting for the next Artist as Instigator is you will be our first artist as Instigator, which will also be in our permanent museum space. So that's just a thing.
Yay.
Yay.
That's true. That's so exciting. Yeah, so I also see some love for Tanika in the chat. So we're getting an idea of how familiar this next artist is with at least one person. But Tanika Lewis Johnson is someone who actually we get referred often. People say you should work with Tanika. Actually, on a post that I made about this on Instagram, someone tagged Tanika, and so there's clearly a lot of synergy there. There's a type of artist that we typically work with, and they are people. If you're familiar with Tanika, people like Tanika, right? So people who and I'm sure like many of you all in this room, because you wouldn't have shown up if you weren't curious. In a lot of ways, that the title, I think, of this residency, the artist as instigator, right? It really speaks to a certain kind of person, a certain kind of creative. And Tanika is one of the first people that I got to work with on this residency, but also someone that I worked with on her previous project, which again, that's really what we're looking for with a lot of these folks that we're working with. Typically, they have some experience doing this kind of work, this kind of project. And so having a project like the Folded Mat project is really what put Tanika on our radar in terms of being a perfect fit for this project, or excuse me, her next project. So I want to tell you a little bit about both, but I'll be very quick because again, I want to make sure we get to hear from you all. But yes, so those of you who are less familiar, Tanika Lewis Johnson calls herself a social justice artist. Some call it social practice, socially engaged. Everything that she does is really rooted in her personal story first, but also her community work. So she's from Inglewood, which is a community here in Chicago on the South Side, and grew up, born and raised there, but went to school on the north side of Chicago, a high school called Lane Tech. So this project that Tanika created was really about two things. One, that experience of growing up in Inglewood and traveling across the city and seeing the neighborhoods change as her bus, didn't even change streets, but just went further north on one street. We'll say Ashland theoretically. As you go north, you will see, that's a north-south street. You will see things change. And Tanika's observations led her to discover what sociologists and historians call something called segregation or hypersegregation, and particularly something that impacts Black folks, immigrants and folks who are people of color predominantly, and especially Black people in cities like Chicago that are concentrated in certain neighborhoods. And that leads to, different sort of treatment of those neighborhoods. So you have high concentrations of Black folks because that there were, certain policies that led to this, and we'll get to that in a second. But you see disinvestment. You see that not only in the businesses and the jobs and the opportunities, but you see it in the housing maybe most clearly. So Tanika's comparing now as a photographer in this project, that difference that she noticed and was always curious about growing up between different houses on the same street. And so you see an example here of 6329 South Paulina and 6330 North Paulina. So for those of you who are not Chicagoans, those are about the same distance from not really the center of the city, but what we call the center of the city. And so on opposite sides of the same street, you see these two different houses. And Tanika's project was simply taking a photo of these houses and putting them next to each other and allowing the observer to draw conclusions. So that was the first phase of it. The second phase was actually bringing the people from those neighborhoods. As you can see, 6329 South Paulina is not inhabited. So that wasn't one of the houses that she did for this part of the project, but some other houses that were occupied. She actually invited the people who lived there to connect with the person who lived at, as she called them, their twin address on the north side. So she would call them map twins. And she connected with them and she worked with sociologists here and folks to develop questions for these folks to ask each other, things that people don't normally ask, even much less their neighbors, much less, people across the city, but things like, um, is everything you need in your neighborhood accessible to you? Um, how much did you pay for your home? Just things that really expose the inequities. And so this project, Folded Map, was really about exposing those inequities and allowing people to really get familiar with this visually, this disparity visually. Her next project that she pitched to the museum really builds off the Folded Map project. And it looks at, again, mapping. So you'll see a map that she actually sorry, next slide, that she was introduced to by a researcher named Amber Henley, who worked on a report called The Plunder of Black Wealth in Chicago. And that report shared this map, which you see on the screen, which is a map of Inglewood, Tanika's community. And every single one of those red dots represents a home that was sold on something called a land sale contract. So if you're familiar with Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Case for Reparations, or some of the other more scholarly or, the writing, and there's a lot of reports, there's a lot of history about this out there. Amber's report in particular looked at quantifying the economic impact. And so that report concluded through research, which is represented by these red dots, that between 3.4 and 4.2 billion, that's billion with the B, $1 billion was legally stolen from Black communities through these racist land sale contract practices, which worked in conjunction with things like redlining, as some folks might be familiar with, racial covenants, all of the discriminatory practices that banks and the federal government used in combination with this particular practice, which was a contract, which basically made it so that Black folks got all of the burdens of home ownership, but none of the benefits. And so folks were basically had no other options because they weren't able to get banks loans from the bank because of the redlining and the discrimination. And so they entered into these agreements with real estate speculators in which they were taking advantage of. Not only were the homes sold at high markup prices, but they were also, again, they were impossible contracts to be able to maintain. So things like if you miss one payment, you are automatically evicted and you don't build any equity. So you basically are kicked out of your home with nothing. And this happened over and over again in neighborhoods like Inglewood, not only in Chicago, but across the country in places like Detroit, for example, where this had a huge impact, not only on that time period in the 50s and 60s, where this practice was rampant, but since then. So this disinvestment had a impact on generations, from the 60s to the 70s, where these same neighborhoods and these same homes just continue to experience disinvestment and different, industries, whether the banking industry, the real estate industry, taking advantage. And so this is a history that some people know and others don't, but I think what Tanika really wanted to show was that there is a direct connection between this practice and the folded map images that you just saw of the difference that segregation makes today and that impact. And so in order to bring attention to this, next slide, she wanted to create these land markers. So her project was all about ideating and designing what you see here, which now has blossomed into a project including, I think it's about 15, maybe more, it's growing. She's still continuing to mark these homes where she's installing, she's working with different designers and fabricators to create these land markers. And she worked with the museum on this language to really try to succinctly and visually share this very complicated history. As it, I try and explain it, but there's really so much to it. I encourage you all to go to either our website or Tanika's website and just to dig in. You will be, really blown away by how much information there is that people just don't know about this practice and how many people were impacted by it, which she calls a widespread land sale contract scam. I also think it's important to note the very bottom, which is hard to see, so I'm definitely going to read it. It says that this crime was never brought to justice. Reparations are due. So going back to this conversation about the residency is really that last line I think is really key because it's not only about making something that's visually impactful and that has a message, but it's really pointing towards solutions and towards people to get involved in repair and remediation. And this one specifically uses the term reparations. Other folks may use other terms, but the really overarching message is that folks in the community are not to blame for these homes that you see that are in the trash that you see, the violence, all of the symptoms, that it's really about a systemic issue and we need organizers and we need policymakers, we need economists, all of us working together to figure out how to make policy changes. And Tanika's done some of that work and she continues to do some of that work through her latest project, which is called Unblocked. And she's already reached out to try to figure out how we can collaborate on that, which is really doing this work. It's repairing these homes, leveraging her art and culture work to repair these homes. So she's actually out there on the ground figuring out how to make this a reality and not to wait for the federal government. Obviously, we're still going to push for that and the banks and everyone involved to remediate the harm that they committed. But at the same time, we're not going to wait for that. So a lot of her work is also organizing. She's a part of the Residents Association of Greater Englewood and other similar community organizations, the Chicago Bungalow Association, lots of different organizations that are doing this work on the ground, which is really important. In addition to creating the land markers, as Lisa pointed out, we do a lot of different projects. There's typically one main project, but then other opportunities come up. And so we were able to do a 3-episode podcast sharing more of this story. And we did interviews with scholars and residents. And then we also hosted a live event with WBEZ Chicago, which is Chicago's NPR affiliate, which just really helped to get the word out even more about this project. So I'm gonna keep us moving here, but definitely recommend y'all check out Tanika's work and also on our website, some of the work that we did. There's lots of great resources. It's called Inequity for Sale. And the podcast is Legally Stolen. Okay, so this slide is just really briefly want to let you all know, obviously we can't pick everyone for the residency. And so we want to make sure that we share just briefly that we have other opportunities. And Lisa already alluded to some of these, including the co-op store. If you are a maker or designer and you're interested in working with the museum to have products in the store, become a partner or a vendor with the co-op. We have an oral history archive, particularly if you have a background in storytelling or if you yourself are from public housing. We invite you to get involved with our oral history project. And we have exhibitions and installations like any other museum, although this is a big critical moment as we're leading towards our opening. There will be many more opportunities going forward. And so that's just sort of a preview of some of the things aside from Artists as Instigator that you all might be interested in. I want to pass it back to Lisa just briefly. We keep the slide up, but if Lisa wants to say something briefly about another ongoing opportunity, although I don't know put it in the chat if we have any New York folks, even if not yourself, if you got some New York folks you can share this message with. We just want to briefly put it on your radar.
Cool. Is there a slide?
No, there's no slide. This is it.
No slide, Tiff. Sorry, I also got dressed up for you earlier, but now I'm starting to cook dinner, so I changed. Now I'm a bagel tourist. So I just did want to let you know that we have a lot of opportunities for artists, and so we're about to release an opportunity for people who live in NYCHA, which is New York City Housing Authority, which is a project for an artist to help design our digital membership card. And so if you're interested, you should reach out to us, or if you know people who are living in NYCHA, and the person who wins will also get 2 round-trip tickets to Chicago and also a hotel to come to our grand opening, but also work with the co-op to help sell their art if they're interested, and also work with us on other branded materials. Yeah, cool.
Great, thank you. All right, now we're going to get back into the open call opportunity while you all are here. And we want to make sure just to kick it off with some of our frequently asked questions, and then we will turn it over to you all if you all have any questions that we didn't get to. All right. So, do I have to live or work in Chicago? This is one we get often. And the answer is no. While, a lot of our artists have lived in Chicago, and there are some advantages, particularly for working together and collaborating for the museum side of things. But we have worked with at least one artist from outside of Chicago, and that is Marisa Moran John. And we're actually still working with Marisa, so we were able to figure out travel and figure out how to connect with her and make it work. So I am just like very conscious that there are people here from Nigeria too, and I want to figure out how to work with you. Unfortunately, we're not able to extend the residency beyond the United States at this time. But again, I'm so grateful you all are here, and I want to figure out how we can, make this work international. But for the time being, we are just focused here on these United States. But we just appreciate, again, anything you all have to share or other ways that we might be able to engage with you, and to, figure out how to stay connected despite the distance. I'm also just really curious, like, what time is it in Nigeria? You could put in the chat, but not necessary. I'm just curious what's going on. Okay, next slide. So do you have to apply again if you applied previously? Maybe. So this is where I was saying earlier, if you can reach out to me if you've applied before and you're thinking about reapplying, we do have a system where we can review your application and let you know if it makes sense. We can give you our 2 cents about sort of what we are seeing and what might help your application moving forward. But you're also just welcome to resubmit. We can also share your prior application. As we know, it's not something that allows you to download as you're filling it out. So if you need a copy of your application, just go ahead and send me a quick email and I'll go ahead and forward that to you. If you have a specific question, you can also include that. Otherwise, we can just let you know if it would make sense for you to reapply, or if we can just move your application over to this year. Trying to make it easy on y'all, basically. Yes, we are looking for specific project ideas. And we really, this is a combination of a lot of different reasons, but the residency as it is only 1 year. And as we found in the past, it's just really hard to build a relationship, to come up with a new idea, and to implement it in a year's time, even if you've done a lot of the background work. And so we really are hoping that we can work with someone who has a specific idea that's close to or ready for this incubation or implementation stage. Really, we want to think about ways to make your work real, to make it something that at least has a prototype, and is able to be at least tested or experimented with community, and with the folks that you're trying to engage. And we think we can best leverage our own resources within a year's time, when folks come with a specific project idea. Again, there may be opportunities to do other things outside of that particular project, but it also helps us focus and plan accordingly. So that's that one. Is the residency open to, let's see, I saw a documentary filmmaker. spoken word artists, visual artists, a playwright, DJs. Yeah, put them in the chat. Yes, the answer is yes, yes, and yes. Okay, so whatever your practice is, even if you don't identify as an artist, but you are creative, you're a maker, again, the most important thing is that you are trying to make a difference, trying to impact policy and make the world more just, thinking about housing and related issues, and working on things through that lens, even if it's a tradition, an art form that's not traditionally associated with social practice or um, social justice kind of work. We love those things that fall outside of the boxes, and we'd be interested in hearing how you would be connecting your particular art form to some of the issues that we're working on and that the communities that you're connected to are working on. So that's the most important part. What level of career development are we seeking? So some residencies say, early career, mid-career, we're looking for established artists. And we've used some of that language in the past, but what we really want to emphasize is that we are really looking for someone, or artists in general and creatives who can show that they have the capacity and they understand what this work is, and that they have some, even if it's just an experiment or a very small scale example, some example of your work in this area. So your work to really use your creativity, your art form, to engage people and issues. And it doesn't have to be related to housing, but it does have to kind of show that you have that interest, that background, that skill set, and that you're willing to kind of work with the museum on in the direction that we're trying to take this work, which is really, under the umbrella of the Artist as Instigator, and all of our programs is about leveraging arts and culture to make public policy change. So really thinking about it from that lens is most important. Um, and your sort of expertise or degree is not the issue for us. It's really about, can you make an impact? Um, and do you have that experience that you could demonstrate doing so? I should say we, because this is all about collaboration. So um, the selection process, it's pretty straightforward, but we have a couple of bullet points. I think we're gonna just run down kind of a 5-step process. So we'll do a brief preliminary screening just to confirm eligibility. Again, that big thing is just really like, we do need folks to be located in the United States, and we do need to see a specific project idea. Outside of that, we'll move you forward to this second stage, which would be a group of diverse stakeholders, including staff, community members, other artists, people who are working in these similar spaces who would be evaluating the work. And I have a slide on that as well, how they evaluate. But once you move past that stage, we will select 3 candidates who we will talk to and interview and do reference checks with. And then we will invite one of those 3 to be the artist as instigator for 24-25. And we will also announce the 2 finalists when we announce the selected artists. So there are a couple opportunities, at least for visibility and for raising awareness about your work and your project, even if you're not selected, for at least 2 other people. So that's one of the things that we've also added more recently into the project. We hope is appreciated, and we hope to also maintain those relationships beyond this residency, and we could talk more about that. So the review committee, it changes every year. I'm always on it. A couple of our staff are always on it, but then we reach out to different people just to also keep fresh perspective. So just because you weren't selected last year, you may get a different reviewer this year who has a slightly different eye or interest, that may also be able to bring a different perspective that puts you in the pool. So just because you weren't selected previously, and just because you don't like change your application, it could be just sometimes luck of the draw. Someone gets a reviewer that gets really excited about your work, and it gets moved to the next stage. So We just want to encourage you all to, continue applying, and knowing that the reviewers also change each year. And so there's an opportunity for your work to be seen by different people who may be in the field. Even if you're not selected, it's a chance for you to be, your work to be exposed to a diverse and invested kind of group of people connected with the museum. And yeah, if you're on this call and you came to the conclusion that this is not the opportunity for you, but you would love to support on the review committee, you can also reach out to me and I would love to share more information with you about that. I alluded to this earlier, but yes, there is a specific rubric. We'll just run through it really quickly. I see we're about 10 minutes till we're gonna wrap up here. So I wanna just move through this rubric. All of this information is also on our website if you're looking for just a quick view of it, and we will share this recording for those of you who have to hop off. So yes, the reviewers are given a rubric. These are some of the top things that we're looking for: community engagement and impact, really this cross-sector approach with linking arts, culture, and public policy, and the strength of the project proposal. So is it specific? Is it feasible within a year? And is it, considering some of the capacity of the museum in terms of what we might be able to contribute, and how, it aligns with our mission. And then all reviewers also get to, this is where I was saying it could be just the luck of the reviewer. Every reviewer gives an overall score that's based on their own personal criteria. We don't pretend to know everything, and we hire these folks. We recruit these folks to do this because they also bring their particular perspectives. And so some of it is a little bit, up to the person. And so we want to make that transparent as well to you all. All right, so that was our last frequently asked question. We want to make sure that you all just are reminded over and over about this application deadline because they creep up. Um, you know, just before you know it, it'll be July. It already is in my mind as a planner. It feels like July to me, but July 21st is our deadline. I believe it's Sunday evening, and we're going by Central Time because we're here in Chicago. But I'm sure if I wake up Monday morning and it's in there, we will accept it. But if you can, aim for that July 21st, that would be great. And we will be able to move you forward from there. So that is our spiel. We want to now open it up to you all. I didn't think I saw too many questions in the chat, but we also want to invite you all to raise your hand, or if there's no hands raised, you can just come off mute and share your question, or you can put it in the chat and Lisa and I will maybe take turns just jumping in and making sure everything gets addressed. But yeah, any questions you all have, feel free. Or did we just do such a great job at the spiel and the FAQs that there's no questions, which I'm okay with as well. We'll give it a minute though, in case folks are thinking about it.
I'll just hopped off mute. Y'all did a very thorough job, I will say. And thank you so much for providing this opportunity to artists. It's genuinely really incredible. What I wanted to ask was, just as you talked about Tanika and the other residents and how you were able to build other projects out of the initial proposal, what does that look like? Is it really just like conversations, just really seeing what fits in with the museum and what y'all are continuing to do in your work and what that artist is doing?
Yeah, exactly. You hit it on the head. I mean, it really starts with that specific project idea, but we set up regular meetings, so it basically like the artist becomes a part of our team and vice versa. And we love just generative conversations in general. I think we get really excited when we see an opportunity, and especially if it aligns with our mission and things that we're doing, even if it's outside of the residency, we try to take advantage of those synergies. And so it's very collaborative and emergent, I guess you could say. But yeah, Lisa, what's your experience? Oh, you're on mute. That's on mute. Yeah.
Sorry. I think one of the things is we definitely want to build a relationship, a friendship, a collaboration with you all. And so, like, for example, with the Jen de los Reyes example, she knew she wanted to write letters to people to encourage people to vote. But in our curatorial conversations, we started really riffing and thinking about the limitations also of electoral politics. And we were thinking about her residency and how November it was going to be over. So what did that mean? And we were thinking about having a message to everybody. And so for us, we're like, well, why not do a big message about this that's on the side of our museum, which is, that kind of thing. And so the murals that you saw kind of emerged out of the conversation and a natural organic development of the project. And so that's the kind of way that we also want to work, where we know that you as artists will also, it's not like it's a finished project that we're asking for. We're asking for like a well-formed idea and a notion of how you might want to work, but then a willingness to also, converse with us, to think with us because of our networks of people. Like we might say, like civic love, for example, is now something which is used in Hawaii, in like the most like bonkers places. And it might be like, hey, are you interested in bringing your project also to Hawaii or somewhere else? And so then like there could be, and it's a sort of growth of the project that you have to be in other states that maybe we have relationships with, yeah. But mostly the conversations are about how to realize your project. And so, it's not like we already have 20 ideas that we just need artists to do. Like for real. Like we want to respect your creative process and the genius and brilliance that you bring to the project too. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, secondary question. Can we reach out to you, Tiff and Lisa, just, to talk a little bit about what we're putting together? I saw the thumbs up.
Yes, for sure. It may get to a point, especially closer to the deadline, where we we don't have enough capacity to answer in, a lot of detail. But we'll do our best to respond to those. And I've had some good conversations with people pre-application that I think are, really good.
Yeah, especially because, we're not the only people who are choosing. And in fact, we're just one of the readers and we'll have other guest readers. And so we can really help inform how you apply and sort of help you sort of frame it in a way that also makes sense to the other panel of people who are helping to pick the artist as instigator. So yeah, we kind of encourage you to reach out too. So.
I have one more question.
Cool.
Hi. How many collaborators can you have before? Do you all have any thoughts on that? On like how many partners can you have? How many collaborations feel like the right amount in a year? How many feel like too many or not enough?
You mean the one artist, not us as the museum? How many collaborators?
Yes, I mean the artists.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
them, yeah.
I was gonna say, ask our current artist as instigator, Dr. Battle. I don't, she's got a lot of collaborators, but I think the smart thing that she did as part of that was not to just partner with a whole bunch of individual people, but to work with partner organizations. And so she's, for example, partnering with Kumba Links, that is then adding like 8 to 10 people to the project. So that gives like 1 point person for that group of collaborators, for example. But she also does have a ton of DJs and dancers. But those are people also that she's already in community with. And so she can effectively manage those partners in a way that feels natural and organic. I think if those were new relationships, it'd be way too much.
or if she was to hand that work over to the museum, we wouldn't necessarily be able to navigate that many collaborators. But because she's from the footwork community, a lot of these people are already in her networks, or they themselves are in crews and groups. She's able to navigate that. So I don't know if it's like a number, as more of like thinking about it, and you do this to Camila, so I'm sure you would approach it in a similar and smart way, in terms of just leveraging your past collaborations or your current community, which I think is just a strength that brings a lot of capacity, but then doesn't stretch you too thin as the artist, or as us as the museum.
Can I also just really underscore, and I maybe didn't say it strongly enough in my first part, but there is a kind of commitment at the museum that sort of critical analysis and a sort of understanding of history allows us to address the most pressing issues of the day. And we definitely believe that critical analysis comes from all sorts of places. So we're not just talking about from within the university or whatever, that we believe that there are organic intellectuals and communities, which are well springs of knowledge and understanding. But a root of this collaboration and artists as Instigator, the ones that we have seen that are most successful, like Tanika's, it is kind of taking a body of evidence and analysis and research, and then thinking about how to amplify that and make it more public. It's kind of that, there's a kind of magic there of thinking about how do you really shed light on a historical problem or issue, and create change from it. Now you could see some of the other artists as Instigators aren't as much in that vein, but they all had it to a certain degree, like Jen wrestling with limitations, the value of electoral politics and what it means. William grappling with and working with people to have an analysis of the unjust policies around housing law, and then how do we actually change that and to create a different world where we can't be discriminated against if you have a record, and so like the most successful artists and skaters are kind of thinking also about what is the body of evidence analysis and the history that they're addressing, and thinking about how they can amplify that, because ultimately we are also a history museum, a site of conscience, and all those things. And those are the kinds of things that if you reach out to us, we can help you frame and think about. And also we have a lot of different relationships with additional writers and thinkers and people who are out there doing analysis that we can also connect you with.
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks for circling back on that, because that's super important. To the collaborator thing, I want to make sure too that I address if it was like about the application process. You also don't need to know all of your collaborators going in, but it's also nice to know, if you do want to include that in your application, that you're planning to work with, whatever number of collaborators. The main thing is that there's one artist as Instigator. It can be a collective, but there should be one point person. So if someone's filling it out for a group, they can just put their name and contact information as the name, and then there's a box for artist name that can name the collective if the collective has a name, or it can have multiple names. But we do need a point person, even if it's like a collaborative proposal, for example. So just in case that was part of your question, I wanted to make sure to address that.
No, that was super helpful. I was mainly asking for the first response, even though I'm sure that's helpful to other people, how you followed up. But as somebody who makes participatory work, like I never work alone. That's just my thing. I don't do things by myself. Even though the work of individuals is valid, it's not what my practice looks like. And I like to be itinerant. That involves partnership, but I also like to work with people who I just think look at a modality around a subject matter from different angles. So I may collaborate with other people. And sometimes with submissions, people are like, no, but we just want you to do the thing you do. And I'm like, yeah, but that comes with a posse. So I guess I know, looking at the other instigators, they look like very collaborative. I know them to be collaborative people, some of them also, but I think it's worth always asking, like, what does it mean if you have other people you envision making your project with. Even if you are the point, you are the person designing the project, you know, what is your comfort level or expectation around like what it looks like to have other people involved? And I think you all gave
Yeah.
a good response.
Yeah, and I just want to really say that we hope that people are coming with their posses and their people for real. And we also believe in paying people who are in the posse. And so there's a way, like even with Shadon now, like we work with her to figure out like how do we make sure that the young people and the different collaborators, the people that she's bringing in to give talks and to do workshops or to whatever, are all in additionally paid as well, and so we are expecting and thinking that's part, and we see that as part of our institutional work and supporting you as the artist and sort of thinking about like how do you do this work in a way that is deeply meaningful to a community, but also how the community is also benefiting in all different kinds of ways. So that will be like, that's part of us. And what Tiff had mentioned is just like the additional budget, because even though there is a budget to the project and a budget that an award that the artist receives, like we know that there's additional expenses and all of that aspects. And that's what we're trying to leverage the institution to do. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Cool. Let's go eat dinner.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we're at time, and I don't know
What time is it in
never
Nigeria?
I
That's
never got the
what-
answer, but I'm sure there's a meal coming. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This really, makes a difference. You all ask great questions, and even that last one, I'm like, how can we like integrate that more? Because I do think that's an essential part of what we do is collaborate, and I want to make sure that folks get that message as well. So yeah, it was great to see everyone, even just the names and boxes. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining us. And we will be sending this video out in the next week or so. So if you want to follow up on it, we'll make sure you all are first ones to receive it. Thanks so much. Appreciate y'all. Take care.
Bye, Tiff. Bye, Mark. Bye, Doreen. Good job. Talk to you later.
Thank you.